So it would seem that virtually every media outlet is talking about this interview. And there's an enormous amount of criticism against President Trump and Vice President Vance. And I think, with great respect to everyone that's made those criticisms, I think they've somewhat missed a very valid point here, which I hope to explain in this video. I have to talk about this because everyone is talking about this, because virtually everyone is saying that Trump and Vance were disrespectful and bullying Zelensky, and so I have to address that in this video. Now, I don't condone bullying and all of that sort of stuff. That's obviously not the point of this video, but I do think a lot of people have missed the point here. Now, I will preface everything I'm going to say with the fact that this was in the Oval Office. It was a visiting president of another country, albeit currently at war and in very difficult times, but president visiting the United States in the Oval Office in the company of the president and the vice president of the United States. And I think that deserves some respect and courtesy from the outset. I think that should preface the rest of what I'm about to say. Now, what I will also say is that, in my view, respectfully, I think a lot of people have commented on this without watching the full interview, without getting the full context, and without fully understanding the nuances and what really happened, and just came to the same conclusion from the short snippet that they've seen online of the exchange between them, and just concluded that since there was Trump and Vance essentially having a go at Zelensky during the conversation, that they were bullies and it's all their fault. And with respect, I don't think it's nearly as simple as that. Now, I did make a comment on this and then deleted it because I thought, well, I made that comment without having watched the full thing, because I did form a view having watched a bit of it. It turns out that I stand by the view that I made, which I'll give you in this video. I stand by that view having watched the full thing. And that is that I think Zelensky was a little bit disrespectful towards Donald Trump and JD Vance in this interview. And I'll explain why. Now, it starts really from about 39, 40 minutes onwards. This whole exchange, the heated exchange. And that is part of the point here. The first 40 minutes of this conversation, this interview, which was full of press, by the way, you can't see them obviously there, but behind the cameras there, it's a whole room full of press and journalists asking questions, which obviously you can hear them all shouting their questions out to get their questions asked and answered. And so it's a room full of press. So it's an international stage. They all knew that this was being broadcast and the whole world will see it. That's important. And so for 40 minutes, this was perfectly polite, perfectly cordial. Donald Trump and JD Vance were being very respectful, very courteous. They were having these open discussions in front of the world media. Some of them very difficult questions and some of them almost antagonistic, but they kept it cool, they kept it polite, they were very supportive. Donald Trump at this point here had just said that he's aligned with the world. He's not aligned with any one individual. He's in favor of peace. He's in favor of making things peaceful and getting rid, stopping the war, etc. And that they're going to have this deal, sign the contract, whatever. So that's where we've got to at this point. And that was 40 minutes worth of conversation. Now, we've got to this point here where Zelensky has effectively started to talk and antagonize Donald Trump and JD Vance, which I'll show you in just a second. Now, the question that was asked just before this point, I will tell it to you rather than play it to you, so I'm trying to limit the amount of the footage I use for copyright reasons, of course. But the question that was just asked by a journalist was that Poland was under Russian control for decades after the Second World War. And many people have now said that Donald Trump is aligning himself too much with Putin. And so Donald Trump responded to that by saying, well, he's not aligned with Putin. He's not aligned with anybody. But if he's aggressive with Putin and then picks up the phone to say, now can we do a deal? Obviously, that's not going to work. It doesn't work that way. You can't be publicly attacking somebody in front of the world's media and then pick up the phone and expect them to do a deal with you. Obviously, that's not going to work. And Donald Trump knows this. And so that's what he just said. And at that point, JD Vance decided that he wanted to contribute to this answer as well. And so specifically, whether or not they were aligned with Putin or anybody, Donald Trump said he was aligned with the world, he was aligned with Europe, and he was aligned with peace. And so he wants peace to end this conflict. So then JD Vance decided that he wanted to step in. So this is the bit that I'm going to show you, and this is the bit where it all kicks off. So I'll mute myself so there's no echo, but take a listen to this short snippet.
One more question.
I will respond to this. So look, for 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy.
And so I'll just pause there for two reasons. One, to give you some views. Secondly, copyright. I'm going to give you some views as we go along. Otherwise, it's too long a string to use as a video. I'm a lawyer after all. So that's a very valid point there. Several years of talking tough to Putin. Obviously, the Biden administration didn't work, hasn't worked, and Putin invaded, and there's been a lot of bloodshed after that. Obviously not working. It is obviously not working. So Vance proposes that diplomacy is probably a better way forward. Perfectly valid point. Nothing wrong with that at all whatsoever at this point so far. Let's listen on.
We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the President of the United States' words mattered more than the President of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
And so he rounds off that point there, and that's his whole point, that it should be about diplomacy and finding a peaceful resolution. And this is where it kicks off.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So he occupied our parts, big parts of Ukraine, part of East and Crimea. So he occupied it on 2014. So
Zelensky is obviously talking about the annexing of Crimea in 2014. And so obviously long ago, before the most recent invasion and so on. But so now he's sort of recapping, if you like. And I'll explain why that's important in a minute, but I won't spoil it. Listen on.
during a lot of years, so I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact line?
2015.
2014.
2014 and 2015.
2014.
Yeah. So
I was not here.
Yeah, but
that's exactly
but,
right.
Yes, but during 2014 till 2022, yeah, the situation the same. The people are been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him.
So here now he's saying that he had conversations with him, but nobody else stopped him. So what he's saying is that nobody else did anything any good. Nobody made it stop. Putin just annexed Crimea. Putin did his thing. No one else did anything that was any good, is essentially what he's saying here, which is a little bit antagonistic. And I have an issue with this because remember my preface to this whole conversation that he's in front of the world's media in the Oval Office on invitation by the President and the Vice President of the United States. So he's visiting here. Many comment on him not wearing a suit, which I think would be respectful for him to wear a suit. That's just my opinion for what it's worth. As a complete tangent, one of the reasons I don't wear a suit on my channel here is because I wanted to make this channel and the law very much more approachable. My very, very, very early videos, I did wear a full suit. And I thought that that was a little bit too formal. And I wanted to be less formal and bring the law to you in a much more relaxed, approachable way. Because I'm no better than you. I'm just explaining and trying to help you to understand law, which is my slogan. So coming back to the point, the whole preface here that is here in the Oval Office, and now he's firing a shot across the bow to say nobody helped us from 2014 onwards. Now, that's not necessarily to say that no efforts were made, just obviously that there was no result. So whatever your efforts, there was no result. Let's listen on.
A lot of conversation, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him, me, like a new president. In 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel, we signed ceasefire. ceasefire. All of them told me that he will never go. We signed him with gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broken this ceasefire. He killed our people and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yeah.
And this is where it kicks off. So in my view of this, I think, with respect to everyone that has made the criticism of Donald Trump and JD Vance and said that they were bullying him from this point forward, I would suggest that, in fact, and you can see from Zelensky's body language right now, he's made that point and sat back with his arms folded. Now, I'm not a body language expert, but I've read enough people, both in court and in business, for more than 20 years. I understand body language, and this is extremely defensive body language. And everything from here on in is defensive and fairly aggressive body language from Zelensky. Donald Trump is sitting composed and thinking about what's happening. But obviously, JD Vance is now responding because JD Vance made the point that we are looking at diplomacy. There's been several years of the Biden administration being aggressive with Putin, trying to bring this to an end. And the way we need to do this is diplomacy, peaceful ways of doing it rather than aggressive. And so in response to JD Vance's suggestion, Zelensky has basically said, well, since 2014, no one did anything, nothing happened, nothing helped. And so what kind of diplomacy are you talking about? So the two main things that Zelensky has said here is that, first of all, the first term for Donald Trump did nothing to stop Putin, nor did any of the other presidents. And secondly, a direct shot at JD Vance's idea that diplomacy is the way forward, to say that his idea is not going to work, diplomacy is not going to work. And I think these two comments were particularly antagonistic on his part. And I think that triggered a response from both Donald Trump and JD Vance. And I think that's where all of this kicked off. So let's listen to a little bit of how that exchange, the now famous exchange, started at this very moment right here with Zelensky's defensive body language. Listen to this.
I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems.
And so now JD Vance comes in with something that you would not ordinarily see at a press conference. This is what would really happen behind closed doors at the negotiating table. They probably are going back and forth like this in all of these kind of meetings that are in private, usually not in front of the world's media. And so Vance here responds, in my view, quite legitimately to say, well, it's disrespectful for you to come here in a public setting to say, whilst you've got these problems, and to say that no one else is doing anything about it and that diplomacy is not going to work. Again, let's listen on.
You should be thanking the president for trying to bring it into this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
And again, immediately, whilst Vance is still talking, now you'll recall, rewatch it if this doesn't make sense, but you'll recall just now, neither Trump nor Vance interrupted Zelensky whilst he was criticizing virtually everybody else, including the United States and several United States presidents, including Donald Trump. Whilst he was criticizing them, they did not interrupt him. They waited until he was finished. And then JD Vance was responding to him, but Zelensky then talks over Vance to get his point across. Let me rewind this just a few seconds and you can see exactly that happening. And I think that itself was disrespectful. And so I do see another side to this. Now, I'm not going to condone bullying, and I'm not going to condone if people say that it's bullying and they feel that it's bullying. I'm not saying that's right or that people doing that are right, but there are two sides to this, and I can see this other side to it, which I think, again, with the greatest respect, a lot of people have missed. They've missed this point. But watch this bit again, where Zelensky talks over JD Vance's response, having already listened to him criticize the United States. Listen very carefully once more.
You should be thanking the president for
Have
trying
you
to
ever
bring
been-
it into this
Have
conflict.
you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been.
And in fact, what he said with his arms folded in a defensive manner was itself disrespectful. He said, have you ever been to Ukraine to say what problems we have? It's another way of saying, how would you know what problems we have? You've never been there. How would you know? That's quite argumentative. It's quite antagonistic. It's certainly disrespectful, especially given the preface that I gave you, which is that this is in the Oval Office at their invitation in the company of the president and the vice president holding a press conference. Listen on.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's
I will
respectful
answer.
to come to the Oval Office
I
of the
will
United
answer.
States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your
A
country?
lot of
So now you can hear very clearly that Vance's response is in defense of the United States. He's coming to the office and criticizing the United States for not having made this stop. Now, despite whatever efforts the United States made in public or in private, that's now just a matter of history. What Zelensky is doing is criticizing the United States in the Oval Office, in a public forum, in front of the world's media, criticizing them for not having made this all stop. So, of course, Vance responded to defend the United States. Of course he did. And I think he was right to do that, quite frankly. But again, if you look at Zelensky's body language, it remains closed off and confrontational and defensive. And if you look at his facial expressions, he's shaking his head. He mutters something to himself, which I'm not going to repeat what others have said that it means, which I've read online, but some people have looked at this very closely. I think Body Language Guy is going to do a very detailed look at this, and I very much look forward to watching that. I think that's dropping later today. I will link him below. Go and check it out. But this is my sort of amateur take on the body language. I've read enough body language in court and in businesses to know when someone is being very confrontational. Let me skip back just a few seconds and watch very carefully Zelensky's facial expressions, his body movements, his overall demeanor, and reaction to Vance talking to him here. All the while bearing in mind Donald Trump stays quiet at this point. He's still not spoken up yet. Watch this.
once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens.
Shaking his head in sort of disagreement, disbelief, disrespectfully, in my view. Watch on.
You bring them on a propaganda.
And that's where he muttered something. If you want to go and look up what people think that he said, I won't repeat it because I can't validate it because I don't speak the language.
Tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's
I will
respectful
answer.
to come to the Oval Office
I
of the
will
United
answer.
States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your
A
country?
lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all,
And so I won't play more, but because I've used a sizable chunk here, but with good reason. So go and watch the full thing. I urge you, if you have views on this, go and watch the full thing and then form your view. You may still think that they shouldn't have talked to Zelensky like that. As a president of a country that is at war, that is being attacked, etc., you might still hold that view. And I'm not saying that's wrong to say that they shouldn't have spoken to him like that. But there is another side to it. So I want to bring the balancing act. I'm not just going to come here and say, yes, I agree that was, that was terrible the way they spoke to him, etc. I have to bring some balance to it. There is always balance in these things, and there is always another way of looking at it. And that is what I hope to help you see. And so in light of that, also, I did a poll on my channel, which I will pull up and I'll refresh so we've got the latest one. Because now, recently, actually a few hours ago, Zelensky landed in the UK. I know the majority of my audience, I think you guys are in the UK, but I do know that I get, thankfully, I'm grateful, I get an audience worldwide, United States, Australia, and many, many other countries. So I posted this poll because Keir Starmer said that Zelensky has the full backing across the United Kingdom. Now, I presume he means everybody in the UK supports Zelensky, which may or may not be true. I don't know. So I did a poll on it to ask people's general views. 3,400 people so far have voted. I expect that to go up significantly because there's the poll below gives an indication of how many people vote on these polls. In the previous one about free speech, 57,000 people voted and overwhelmingly said no, we don't really have free speech in the UK. But this current poll, Starmer says Zelensky has the full backing across the United Kingdom. Do you agree? Do you agree that he has the full backing across the United Kingdom? 3,400 people voted. 83% said no, they don't agree. Now, obviously, this is not a scientific poll, and obviously, I can only assume that roughly the same statistics vote on this that watch my channel. So roughly 80% are in the UK, and maybe 20% or so from other countries have voted on this poll. I don't know because it doesn't give me the statistical breakdown, but 83% of the people that voted on this poll out of 3,500 so far said no, he doesn't have the full backing across the United Kingdom. And one of the reasons why is obviously the UK is sending a lot of money to Ukraine to support Ukraine. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but a lot of money going to Ukraine. A lot of people may not want the money to go to Ukraine. A lot of people may want the UK government to support our own country and our own people first before sending money away for war efforts. Now, again, there's a lot of different views on that. I'm not going to get into the politics of that, but those are the different views, the different discussions that people have. And so that is very much something of debate. And regardless, I don't think Keir Starmer can say that the whole of the UK supports Zelensky. That just cannot mathematically be true. I think at best, even if 80% of the UK supported Zelensky and Ukraine in this war, and by support I mean sending money, etc., or even agree with him as opposed to agree with Putin or whatever. Again, not saying what's right and wrong here. I'm just saying some people will hold those views. I think it's mathematically impossible for Keir Starmer to say the entirety of the UK supports Zelensky and Ukraine in this situation. Let me know what you think in the comments below, politely and respectfully, please. But I'd be interested to read your comments, and please do vote on the poll. I'll link that below. I will also link the body language guy, and hopefully he's going to do, or even has done by the time I finish recording this, a video on the body language, because I certainly see a lot of body language coming out of this interview. And I think, regardless of people thinking that it's wrong for Trump and Vance to speak the way that they did, I think a lot of people have missed that point. They've missed the point that the antagonist, in my view, here, I think I have to say Zelensky was the initial antagonist here. And so they were responding and defending the United States. And to a large degree, I think that's fair enough. Did they go too far? That's a matter for you. Let me know your thoughts and comments in the box below. But please do watch the full thing and form your own views. And with that, I thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.